And he did also had an interest in the cultural influences on thought process and how that the qualities of that process might be different in different cultures. And he did, for example, an Egyptian series, a Babylonian series, a Persian series, a Chinese series, and so forth. So we're going to end the program tonight with the first 3 of the Persian series. It's an 18-part series, all hand-painted. And then a little film, the Chinese series, that he made at the very end of his life. It's a scratched film. He actually literally scratched it with his fingernails in bed, very near to the end of his life. It's his very last film. So I'll let you see the films, and we'll talk later. Thank you.
Again, we'll be running straight through. There's leader between the films, and at one point it changed between 16 and 35, so there will be some gaps between each film. And I also want to thank the Academy Film Archive that generously made all these prints available and is in the process of preserving all of Stan's films. So thank the Academy very much. And thank you all. Enjoy the show. We'll see you after.
Does anybody, there was, I thought, a bit of sound problem with Boulder Blues. It wasn't quite right, but nothing to do with you, but I'll have to look into what's wrong with that.
Is the title card on Persians 3 supposed to roll a bit into the film itself?
I think that was an error which he decided to leave be. Sometimes he incorporated errors and thought they were fine the way they were. Anybody have any other questions or comments? Yeah?
I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the thought process films. And one of the things that I noticed in watching them is a sort of modeling of the thinking process in terms of zooming, cutting, overlapping. And I'm wondering if, for Stan, there was a philosophical basis for understanding the internal process. Was it based on literary models, philosophical models, psychological models?
I don't know that he. I don't know. Certainly, he looked at a lot of other visual art, painting, other films and painting, and he would recognize what he believed to be a true equivalent of a thought process. You know, that he would say, oh, that person is dealing with thought process, because he would recognize it. But I think what he was doing was recognizing something he himself had seen or experienced. I mean, I think that he could do this. I couldn't. I don't know. I don't know how. It's a hard thing to sort of put into words. But he talked about the movements of the mind as something he studied in himself. You know, and he would get into these deep trance states, and he would become very aware through years of developing an awareness of that, of the optic feedback, for example, in his eyes, you know, his closed eyes, and it became like, you know, that he became more and more aware of the actual movements of his mind. I mean, I can't, you know, I'm not, you know, silly. I don't want to speak for him because of what can I do. I mean, you know, it's a very hard thing to answer, because yes, he was, you know, he was very widely read and he looked at a lot of art, so no doubt that was all informing him. But it was from his own mind, his own studies of his own perceptual processes. And he was actually, see, he didn't like the word abstract. Because he felt that he was doing a documentation of something when he painted these films, as closely as he could, make an equivalent of something that was real and concrete to him, and that we all had, but were not fully aware of. You know, that we had that ability to be more aware of that, but it sort of becomes background, and you don't pay attention to it. You know, the source of the images and that sort of thing. I don't know if I've answered your question very well, but.
Yeah. I mean, you see, you know, there are formal models for thinking about perception, you know, in different sources. I was just wondering whether, you know, whether that was a way in which he thought about process. And speaking of process, with the Persian series, I was really curious to know how was he painting directly on the films
Yes.
in those cases? And was he painting, were there several layers that he would paint on that would then
Yeah, there was some
be
optical
matched?
printing involved afterwards. So he would, yeah.
And when he was painting or working on the films themselves, would he then use the camera to zoom in and out? Because, many of the films, there's a kind of perceptual direction that we're led either into the work or out of the work or within the work, either through rhythm or different kinds of movements that would be repeated.
Right. It was painted and then optically printed and then edited. So he would do all of those things. Yes, there was zooming in and out and taking partial frames in some cases and double printing or various things that he would do in the optical printing stage. And I mean he would do it. First he was just giving directions to a guy at the lab at the Western Cine Lab in Denver who did it for him for years. And I think when he was doing the Persians, he was actually doing it himself on an optical printer with the help of Mary Beth Reed, who was a student of his, because he had never worked with an optical printer himself before, and so she was assisting him in doing that. Anybody else?
On the final piece, you said he was doing a lot of it in bed, for instance. How did he do the editing on that? I mean, did he just have an assistant do it? Because the timing was pretty interesting.
Oh, well, that was he scratched it. He gave it to Courtney Hoskins, another student of his who was working at a lab at the time, and his only instructions were to double print it, like 2 frames. Print each frame twice. Once around, and then each frame once the second time around. And that was the only instruction, as far as I know. Otherwise, it's just straight from what he scratched. On 35 millimeter. Usually like the Persians, for example, he was painting on 16 millimeter film, and the Chinese series was actually scratched onto a roll of 35 millimeter black leader. Yes?
Did he ever mention to record his dreams, or was it only about thought process? Or meditation, he was talking about.
Did he record his dreams?
Or try to repeat them on film?
I think so. Yes. He did literally record his dreams often. Wake up in the middle of the night, write down his dreams. He has dream journals. But on film, yes. I mean, he was interested in all different forms of vision, and so to him, whether you're, anticipating, remembering, dreaming, seeing, with what's in front of you, seeing peripherally, seeing your closed eye vision, all were given, equal status to him. So yes, he did include, remembered dream imagery in his films. Yes?
Yeah. The images that he shot out of a plane or the mountains or whatever, the houses, did he have a bank of those that he could keep and say, I think I'm oversimplifying, but I'll put the clouds in that one?
Did he keep and reuse films?
Or did he go and say,
films?
for this particular film, I'm going to go shoot this?
Well, I don't know that he didn't sort of think it out so much ahead, so specifically like that. But there was, like, for example, in the Visions of Meditation, that was from a car. A lot of it, we were driving trips, so he was shooting from a car a lot. So it would evolve as it did. I guess he'd have certain preconceptions in a general sense of what he was going to do, but maybe not that specific. But after making a film, certainly he would keep some of the outtakes and reuse them. Certain things from earlier films reappear in later films, definitely. So there are use of. I don't know. I guess when he's in the middle of editing a new film, and when he was doing that, if that something that he recalled from earlier that seemed to fit, he'd dig it out and put it in. So it certainly happened. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah.